As Lin and his party members were teleported out of the dungeon, the other city students were shocked because it hasn't even been half an hour since they entered. Some of the other city students thought Lin and his party ran away after coming in contact with some monsters, and some of them were saying Lin's skeletons are just for show. The other Jiajing Academy students told Lin that it's okay if they didn't clear the dungeon. All that matters is their safety. Jin was surprised they didn't die and questioned why they entered the dungeon if they couldn't clear it. While the other students were busy gossiping, Tao Dao turned to Ning and told her to begin the plan they discussed inside the dungeon. Ning activated the cooldown talisman and teleported her and Lin back inside the dungeon. Tao Dao was feeling nervous about sending just Lin and Ning into the dungeon, but Mayo reminded her that they had just seen Lin's combat capabilities, so she was sure they would be fine. Tao Dao realized that there was no reason to worry. She had just seen Lin solo clear the dungeon in nightmare difficulty. Inside the dungeon, Ning says she wasn't expecting that Lin would be helping her level up so soon. She told him to give it his all and not give up halfway. She also says the cooldown talisman could be used one more time after they clear the dungeon, so she wanted them to make use of this opportunity and grab all the merfolk's tears. She wanted them to clear the dungeon as quickly as possible. As the two discussed, a merfolk was lurking in a nearby pond. Lin noticed the merfolk and quickly ordered his skeletons to deal with it. Afterwards, Lin told her not to worry because when it came to clearing dungeons, he was the fastest. A few minutes later, they arrived at the Merfolk Queen's Serpent's Den and slayed it. Previously, it took them half an hour to reach the Serpent's Den, but now it only took them 5 minutes. Ning was impressed, and she told Lin he was more amazing than she thought. Lin thanked her and said they should head to the Merfolk Palace. With the skeletons leading the charge, they were able to easily make their way to the palace and slay the guards. The Merfolk's queen came out of the palace, and Ning hid behind Lin. She thought if she didn't look at the queen, she wouldn't fall for her mesmerized spell. From behind, Ning told Lin to destroy the Merfolk Queen. Lin used the curse spell and corpse explosion, one-shotting the Merfolk Queen. Ning leveled up and she turned to Lin saying they should quickly go another round and get the final Merfolk tier. When Lin first met Ning, she was level 19 and he was level 10, and she just now managed to hit level 20. Lin concluded that Ning doesn't like farming for levels. The two of them were teleported outside the dungeon, shocking the other students. They turned to each other questioning what Lin and Ning were able to do in just 10 minutes. Ning called out to Tao Dao and the others, telling them that they finished the dungeon and used the cooldown talisman again. Tao Dao and the others looked at each other questioning if Lin was really able to clear the dungeon in less than 10 minutes. Mayo told her Lin was more capable than they thought. Inside the dungeon, Ning challenged Lin. She set a timer to see if Lin could clear the dungeon faster this time. Lin isn't one to back down from a challenge, so he accepted. And 9 minutes later, Lin killed the Merfolk Queen. This was 30 seconds faster than before. Lin turned to Ning saying they should return since they were done. They quickly exited the dungeon. Ning was especially excited to see how the other students would react when they saw they had the 3 Merfolk tiers. Outside the dungeon, the other students gathered at the entrance awaiting Lin and Ning's return. As Lin and Ning returned, they gossiped among each other saying they wasted a talisman. And because there's no way Lin could clear a dungeon in 9 minutes, they guessed he ran away without even fighting a monster. Tao Dao approached Ning asking her how things went. Ning told her that they were able to get the other 2 Merfolk tiers. The dungeon began to close, shocking the other students. They questioned why the dungeon was closing all of a sudden. One of them explained that the dungeon is only supposed to close once all 3 of the Merfolk tiers were gone. Lin told Tao Dao that since they had everything they came for, they should get going, but a student with the summon profession from the other city rushed at them saying he would take the Merfolk tiers from Lin. The other students found it hard to believe that Lin was really able to solo the Merfolk dungeon, but they couldn't let him get away with the Merfolk tiers. So they joined the summoner student and attacked Lin. The summoner student activated his summon skill, summoning 3 giant monsters. Lin summoned his skeleton and they wiped out one of the summons in one hit. This shocked Lin because he wasn't expecting the summons to be so weak. The summoner student began to suffer the recoil of losing one of his summons. Lin summoned a few more skeletons to take out the other summons. The summoner jumped on one of his summons and began running away. The other students who were rushing stopped. They began to question how Lin's skeletons were so strong. The summoner thought Lin had definitely awakened a talent, and since a powerful student had shown up, he had to report it. The other student also began running away from Lin and his skeletons. The student of Jiajing Academy burst out laughing at the sight of the other city students running away. They all decided that from now on Lin would become their role model. Jin regretted leaving the party because he would have been able to complete the trial. Angry because he failed the test, he promised to get his revenge on Lin. Later in a classroom in Jiajing Academy, Cao Dao thanked Lin for carrying her through the dungeon. This trial was very important to her. Lin didn't answer, making her feel bad. Ning told Cao Dao not to feel bad because even though Lin doesn't talk much, he was a good person. Lin received a message from Bai Yuan asking him to come to the dean's office. Inside the dean's office, Bai Yuan told Lin that he had the best performances during the trials this time as well. Lin thanked him but says he just did the best he could. Lin's humble personality further impressed Bai Yuan, and he asked him if he knew what the merfolk tear is used for. Lin responded to Bai Yuan saying he doesn't, and asked himself if he just got another important item without realizing. Bai Yuan explained that the merfolk tears are useful in increasing the success rate of awakening a talent at level 40, and even if the level of the merfolk tear is low, it's still important to the process. Bai Yuan didn't expect Sakura Kingdom to find the location of the merfolk dungeon, and their students almost brought the failure of the trial. Luckily, Lin was present and managed to bring back all 3 tears for Shenzia. Bai Yuan asked Lin if he wanted anything in return for his accomplishments. Right now, Lin can't find any information about his sister, so he questioned if he should use this opportunity to ask about his sister. He decided that this opportunity would be best used to find out more information about his sister, and he asked Bai Yuan if he could help him find his sister. Bai Yuan knew Lin was going to ask about his sister, and says his sister joined the creation seminary at the beginning of the year, so Lin won't be able to find any information. All of the students in the creation seminary have no information listed in the database, and his sister is no different. This surprised Lin because the creation seminary was Cao Dao, Zia, and Ning's goal. He didn't expect his sister would enroll in that faction too, and is surprised she had the skills to be accepted. Bai Yuan told Lin that he wouldn't be able to see his sister unless he joins the creation seminary, so if he had any question he should try joining. He sent Lin the admission requirements for the creation seminary and says since he couldn't answer Lin's question about his sister, Lin could ask for something else. Lin told Bai Yuan that he wanted a cooldown talisman. The cooldown talisman is extremely rare and can't be bought from a market. It is also the item that Lin needed the most right now. Bai Yuan chuckled, saying after seeing Lin's performance during the trial he guessed he would ask for this. But the cooldown talisman is not something the school can buy easily, so he wanted Lin to complete another task before he gave him a cooldown talisman. With the cooldown talisman, Lin can level up faster and quickly join the creation seminary to see his sister, so Lin asked Bai Yuan for the task. Bai Yuan took out a teleportation stone and told Lin he needs to be level 20 for the task he wanted to assign him. He says if Lin was in a hurry to level up, he could make his way to the dungeon hall and farm levels. He handed Lin the teleportation stone, explaining that the school didn't hand out teleportation stones to just anyone. Lin took the teleportation stone, thanking Bai Yuan, and instantly used it. This shocked Bai Yuan because he was expecting Lin to rest since he just finished the trial. Inside the dungeon, Lin looked around surprised to see the amount of dungeons in the dungeon hall. He looked at the requirements for the creation seminary and saw he needed to be over level 30. He was also impressed by his sister because she managed to reach over level 30 after 4 months in Jiajing Academy. The second requirement for the creation seminary is to clear the level 30 dungeon, Abyss Frontlines on Hell difficulty, and the third requirement is to reach 1,000 contribution points. Lin knew he couldn't complete the second difficulty on his own, so he wanted to complete the third requirement, but he didn't know how to get contribution points. A blonde-haired girl approached him asking if it was his first time in the dungeon hall. Shu Han introduced herself to Lin and says she could show him around the dungeon hall and explain everything for a price. Lin asked how many points she was charging, and she said 100. Lin paid her the 100 points and she took him around the dungeon hall, explaining how things worked. In the dungeon hall, there were 2 dungeons below level 20, 18 dungeons between level 20 and 30, 20 dungeons between level 30 and 40, 52 dungeons between level 40 and 70. In addition, there are 2 large dungeons that can hold more than 40 people, and 1 large dungeon that can hold over 100 people. In total, there were 95 dungeons in the dungeon hall. Each dungeon has a clear record set by a party. Setting a new clear record gives more rewards. Han brought him to the task and teammate recruitment center and explained that Lin can earn points here or recruit teammates. She asked Lin if he had any questions, and Lin asked her how he can get contribution points. She says he can earn contribution points by practicing in trials and completing tasks. Lin looked at a board showing how much contribution points a task can give. He gets disappointed because most tasks only give 2 to 3 points. Han says getting contribution points is difficult because anytime one that gives a lot of points is posted, it is quickly taken by another student. It is a battle for points because points are needed to get into the creation seminary. Lin received a notification from his communication device telling him he received 50 points from the trial. Lin thanked Han for showing him around the dungeon hall and approached one of the dungeons below level 20. The record for the dungeon is 1 hour and 17 minutes. No one had been able to beat the record in 3 years. Lin entered the dungeon prepared to beat the previous record. The other students present in the hall gossiped among themselves. They thought Lin was a big shot, but turns out he is just some guy below level 20. Inside the dungeon, Lin summoned his skeleton warriors and ordered them to spread out and wipe out the monsters they came across. He was excited to see how much his level would increase after the dungeon. The death message started popping up like crazy, making Lin realize his skeletons could handle the small fries, so he made his way to the boss to save time. A little later, he found the mutated dragon turtle, the boss of the dungeon, hiding in a pond. Seeing Lin on the edge of the water, the turtle jumped out of the pond. Just from the look of the turtle, Lin could tell its defense was higher than the merfolk queen. He summoned his skeleton warriors to attack the turtle in the air. The turtle used super defense, greatly reducing the damage Lin's skeletons were doing. Lin could now understand why no one had managed to break the record in 3 years. And since he was in a rush, he used the skill Soul Blaze on the turtle. The turtle flipped over and Lin's skeletons were able to deal the finishing blow. Lin's experience bar went up by 35%, and one more clear will bring him to level 18. He started wondering what he will receive for setting a new record. Inside the dungeon hall, a bell was rung signaling someone has set a new record. The students gathered around said dungeon, surprised to see Lin did it solo. For setting a new record, Lin received 1,000 points and 5 contribution points. Since he could get contribution points by setting records, Lin looked for another dungeon. The students observed him questioning if he was going to set another record. A level 30 asked the others if it would be embarrassing if he asked Lin to carry him. Lin chose a dungeon, but he needed to be level 18, so he made his way back to the one he just set a record in. 30 minutes later, he stepped out of the dungeon and he was level 18. He also broke his own record. The students present began to question where such a godly person came from and if he would be able to break all of the records. Lin approached the spider nest dungeon. It had a record that nobody had broken in 3 years as well, and the record was set by a party. He apologized to the previous record holder, saying he needed the points, and selected the nightmare difficulty. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, then hit the like button.